I'm Anthony Forrest, the president of Steel Cod, and I'm here with John Beresford, our VP of Sales, ready to discuss all things appliances.
Hey guys, welcome to the Steel Codcast. I'm Shannon, joined by John. Hey John.
Hey.
And it is Friday, so you know what that means. It is the Steel Cod Retail Council question answer analysis with the two of us. So we have a good one this week, per usual. It's 4 questions and some surprises. John does have feelings on a few of these. So we will get right into it. But before we do, John, can you just give like a brief overview of what the Retail Council is?
Yeah, so real quick, it is, some of the best and brightest kind of retail minds, strictly on the retail side, nothing from the manufacturer side or anything like that, no customers obviously. But just retailers from all levels. I mean, they could be luxury retailers, they could be owners, they could be, managers, salespeople, top-end salespeople. There is a vetting process, small vetting process that they go through, and now we're at basically hundreds of members now at this point, and it's 4 questions every week that they answer completely anonymously, and it gives us some good stuff to talk about as a result.
Yeah, definitely. And we do have a link that you can fill out if you want to apply to join the real retail council. So that will be linked in the description and in the show notes. So if you're interested in that, fill that out and apply. All right, let's get right into it. Question 1. All right. Broil King has dropped out of the outdoor cooking conversation relative to Weber and Napoleon. Name the specific thing Weber and Napoleon are doing on the floor right now that Broil King has stopped doing. And tell us whether you think that gap is recoverable or if the window has already closed. Okay, tough question here. And the council had a response. So they said, um, they could not they largely could not engage with this question this week, and the
Mhm.
overwhelming majority of respondents simply did not carry these brands. So that's interesting. The council skews heavily towards luxury and premium outdoor. So we know those brands: Kalamazoo, Lynx, Heston, stuff like that.
Mhm.
Um, what was notable is that a significant portion of the council had never even heard of Broil King. So this is almost like an answer without actually giving an answer, John. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I would say that's probably my thought. And look, wait, I mean, we let off the top with talking about the council, right? I mean, we have hundreds of retailers in this council at this point. And, most of them answer, I would say all, at least not, at least most questions every week. So to see this come back the way that it did was, I mean, it was surprising for me, number one, but it was kind of funny too. But here's what I'd say about it, and it was more to your point, right? The non-answer is actually the answer, right? Which is the luxury floor has completely exited this conversation, right? Because they're not only saying we don't carry Broil King, they don't even carry Weber and Napoleon, right? And so these brands just simply quite, I mean, they're just not in the room, that our council really operates in, which was kind of eye-opening for me. So look, I'm not gonna do a big rant on this one because there's not a whole heck of a lot to talk about here, but I think that there is something bigger here. And I think the message, and I struggled to come up with one, so this might not be the best, is, you know, my plea to all of the retailers that are out there is to kind of get out of your own showroom, right? And just know who the players are in every category that you sell, even if they're not on your floor, right? You need to know every single one. And even the brands that you would never carry, that you've sworn off, you still have to know what they're up to, right? You still have to know who these players are, right? I mean, even if the brands they exist purely to reinforce why you made the decision you made about your floor in the first place, whatever your reasoning is, you have to know who they are, right? I mean, we have council members, right, that are serious operators, right? Elite of the elite in independent retail, right, who have never heard of Broil King. And look, I understand why, I think more so here than I do in other categories, right? Because they sell strictly luxury outdoor grills, right? They don't even live in this space. Broil King lives nowhere near the luxury outdoor grills. But look, your customer is not confined to your showroom and your way of thinking, right? They've been on the internet, right? They've been to a big box store. They've heard names that you've never even probably said out loud in your showroom before. And when they walk into your showroom and mention something you've never heard of, just understand you're losing credibility before you've said a single word about the products that you actually do know about and do want to sell them and could probably give them a good pitch on. So you have to be really careful with that. Is know your products inside and out, but you have to know the competition, right? At least know what exists in the category, even at an entry level, right? Even in mass market, even in the spaces that you've deliberately, which is a lot of you, have chosen not to occupy, right? That's got to be the baseline for everybody, right? Not knowing is not neutral. Okay? It's really just a miss. And it's a miss that shows up, in at exactly the wrong time and in exactly the wrong moments, and it's going to happen pretty consistently. Think about that, Shane. If a customer walks in and they say, "Well, I was looking at Broil King," and you start with, I don't know what, DCS. You need to know how big of a gap there is between what they were looking at and what you're trying to bring them to, right? Just off the top of the head, before you even get into the conversation, you need to understand what you're working with, where your starting point is, right? Because you have to cushion that conversation before you get up and that, well, listen, we only sell luxury and here's kind of where we start and here's the reasons why we do. You have to be able to form that narrative before you just walk in and be like, Broil King, I don't even know who they are. Let's go start with DCS. And all of a sudden they're staring at a $6,000 grill head when they were looking at a $1,700 grill down the street. And you didn't know, right? So you couldn't prep them for the conversation properly. I mean, that's a gigantic miss. So if you don't want to carry them, don't carry them. That's fine. There's a million reasons not to carry them. There's a million reasons to carry them. That's fine. Whatever your model is, your model is. But if you're a salesperson on that floor, you got to know the players and you have to be able to build a story around why you don't carry them and why you do carry who you do carry, right? I mean, that's just, to me, that's common sense, but I don't know, maybe it's not.
If you guys want a deep dive episode on how to handle a situation like that, let us know because I'm also curious. Put it in the comments. Send me a message, Anthony, and it's really just you're sending it to Anthony. You're not sending it to me. Anthony at steelcod.com. Or fill out one of the mailbag questions. Submit that because I am curious what you would do. How do you get there? Okay. Thank you, John. Thank you for
Mhm.
that. All right. Question 2 that we asked the Retail Council this week. Can a luxury brand that OEMs everything outside of cooking, dishwashers, refrigeration, etc., still hold a credible seat at the luxury table? Or does that dependency eventually expose itself in a way that the customer feels? Name the brand that you think is closest to that line right now and tell us why. Okay, so again, this is kind of a unique episode because normally I feel like we get a lot of the same answers and it's very clear how the
Right.
market is being represented, but this one is a bit of a mixed bag. We did get an answer though, so this is not a non-answer one. A good portion of the council wasn't familiar with the term being used in the question. So John is going to clear that up in the beginning of his response. Among those who did engage with the answer, it was clear Sub Zero and Wolf were the runaway answer for how to do this correctly, and it wasn't particularly close. And then across the board, the council said that what matters is not who manufactures the product, but whether the brand delivers on service and support after the sale, which 1000%. Other brands that received mention where floor confidence had eroded was Fiaba, Thermador, Jenn-Air, and Viking all came up in that context. So, John, please explain what OEM is and then give us the rest of your response.
So first, my bad on the terminology, I guess, right? I guess that one's on me. So I guess let's define that before we go any further because it's pretty important to the question. So OEM stands for original equipment manufacturer. So basically what that means in plain English is one company builds a product that another company sells under their own name. Okay. It's extremely common across almost every industry that's out there, and the appliance category is certainly no exception. So when a brand does not have the engineering capability, or maybe even the desire or the want, or maybe the manufacturing infrastructure to build something themselves, they find a partner who does it and hopefully does it well, and then they put their name on it. That's essentially what we're talking about here. So, you know, like the council pointed out, even Sub-Zero and Wolf OEM some of their products, right? Steam ovens, microwaves, speed ovens, ice makers, hoods, those types of things are the ones that you commonly see with a lot of these brands. There are categories where even the most respected brands that are out there in the independent channel rely on outside manufacturing, okay? And with Sub-Zero specifically, to me, that's the answer. They do a phenomenal job of this, right? Their entire operation is seamless, which I guess is why so many people, even in the industry, probably didn't even know that they OEM some things that are out there. The product performs really, really well. Obviously, they care very much and they take the time to decide who their partners are going to be. The service is always going to show up, just like if you bought, one of quote unquote their products. The brand stands behind it completely. You would never know from the ownership experience that the product was not built in the same facility as everything else with a true Sub-Zero or Wolf badge on it. And I think for OEM, that is really the standard, right? That's what doing it right really looks like. So the question is not whether you OEM. Okay. The question is whether you can maintain your standard when you do it. And the council, I think, gave us some pretty clear answers on which brands have done it and which brands still have some more work to do. Um, there's the names like the Vikings and the Fiabas and all of those guys. Some of them were pretty raw, right? Because they just stopped presenting the brands outright entirely. And it wasn't they stopped selling the product. A lot of times they've gone away from the brand as a whole. And that's what it looks like when OEM dependency can really destroy your floor confidence. And that was the whole genesis of the question, is really what we were trying to get to. It's never going to be in a single category, but really just across your entire relationship with the brand at that point. So if you are going to OEM, you have to make sure that you do it right, because you can have your own cooking platform and it could be phenomenal. But if you're not holding your end of the bargain in refrigeration or dishwashers or something like that, your entire brand suffers as a result. And that's really what we were getting back from the council members that did understand my horribly worded question, apparently. But that's really what it is. OEM can be a great decision for your brand, as Sub-Zero and Wolf has proven out over years. But it can absolutely be a brand destroyer if you do get it wrong, whether you're picking partners wrong or you just don't stand behind it the same way in terms of back end support. So it's something these brands need to be really careful about.
Yeah, totally. Maybe we'll do an entire episode on OEMs. Are we kidding? I don't know. I don't know, John. You let us know. You people, you listeners, you let us know
We might
what your
need
thoughts
to. I
are.
don't know. I mean, I thought that, like I said, I thought that was a term that, being in the industry, you would
Yeah.
need. Did you know it before the question popped up? Did you know what OEM was? It's okay if you didn't.
No.
Okay. I mean, you wouldn't need
No.
to on your side,
No, I've never
so
heard of that. But once
okay.
you started explaining it, I knew what you meant. I've heard of that concept before. I just didn't know the term.
Okay.
Um So interesting. But yeah, you guys let us know in the comments. We could definitely do a deep dive or something like that if you're interested in that sort of thing.
I'm
Obviously,
sure
like
the
we said,
brands would love that.
Sub-Zero is a good example of what you should do. And then there are some brands that are falling behind here. So, all right, let's move into question 3. And all right, this is a short question with a long list of responses. So I'll read the question first, and then I'm pretty much going to read my notes verbatim for these answers so that we can be very clear about who is getting what feedback, okay? All right. So, name a brand your team has made a floor level decision to stop leading with in a specific category. I'm interested. Tell us which category and tell us the specific things that happened that drove that decision. Okay.
Mm.
So, which brands are you not leading with in a specific category and why? All right, here we go. First response: Samsung came back strongly. The consistent reason was availability. Interesting. Jenn-Air came back strongly. Availability and poor back-end support were the overwhelming themes. Electrolux came back as a brand that has largely been displaced on floors. The council pointed to back-end support as the reason. Seeing a theme here.
Hmm.
Dacor came back as a brand the council feels has fallen significantly, especially in cooking since the Samsung acquisition. LG came up specifically in cooking. The council continues to sell the brand in other categories, but cooking has become a problem. I'm interested to hear why and LG because I would have thought the opposite. I guess I don't know. Maybe I'm ignorant, but I don't
Well,
know.
LG doesn't necessarily mean SKS either, right? It's
Well,
all the
I know what you
yeah.
mean, but like some of their ranges have, some power. Okay, anyway, you'll have to tell me why because I'm curious. I don't know. All right, I'm just a marketer, guys. All right. And Thermador came back more than anyone expected, including myself,
Yeah,
across
me
multiple
too.
categories with poor representation and back end support cited most consistently as the reasons. Thermador. Wow. Okay. Wow. All right, John. I know that was kind of a lot,
Yeah.
so feel free to reference the list and break that down. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, yeah, so I guess if we run down the list, look, Samsung, not surprising, right? The availability story has been consistent and the council has been pretty consistent with it as we've gone through it. A lot of things that you hear with Samsung, which didn't pop up a lot in these answers, is the back end support with them as well, right? Is that they've always been a problem with serviceability and those types of things, but it didn't pop up. It tells me that all right, I'm not even going to waste my time telling you about the back end support part because the availability has become the real problem now for us, which I thought was a story in and of itself. Dacor, partner brand, obviously not surprising either, right? We've been watching that arc kind of play out now for a while. And, this is a brand that used to lead and innovate in luxury cooking, has kind of been reduced to really kind of almost like moving refrigeration pieces at a lower price point since that whole Samsung acquisition, and that's Dacor. The Dacor situation really is exactly kind of what I think everybody kind of predicted was going to happen and what everybody feared was going to happen. And I know we did a question on this, I think last week, so we're not going to sit there and beat them up or anything like that. But the parent company risk is a big thing. I think when Samsung first bought Dacor, everyone was like, "Ugh, I wonder how that's actually going to go." And now we're seeing really kind of how it's gone. Jenn-Air, not surprising. Look, I mean, the council's never going to waver on these poor guys, and we don't have to go into detail if you want to. I mean, go look at our previous ones, but again, obviously not surprising with the current temperature and those types of things that are out there. But I was with you, Shannon. Thermador popping up as much as it did. Okay, as it genuinely surprised me, okay? Because I mean, look, we're talking about one of the most dominant luxury forces in independent, right? In the independent channel for sure. It's one of the strongest, if not the strongest program structures in the category, and it's a brand that has real products and real market presence and all of that kind of stuff. So coming back as many times as it did was surprising. But what I would guess that this was probably more of a regional answer than anything else. That's what it sounded like to me as they came back, because representation for BSH in most areas is phenomenal. I happen to know the reps in a lot of these different areas, and they're great at what they do. So my guess is maybe they've fallen off in terms of representation, or maybe some new representation in some certain areas that are really starting to feel it now. That's the only way that I can make sense of this in my brain. And it brings up a good point, right? Is that I don't care how good your product is. I don't care how strong your program is, right? And how many awards you won or how many trade show booths you have or anything like that. None of that matters, okay? None of it matters if you put the wrong rep in the field. Okay? The rep is your brand builder more than maybe even you want to give them credit for, right? Because the ones that show up consistently and know the product at a deep level and understand the dealer's business, not just their own business, right? But the dealer's business, they make the floor feel like a partner and not just like this kind of cold distribution point, right? Every visit is really going to deposit something new into that relationship, right? And then every conversation that they have eventually kind of builds towards something and everybody can see it. That's great. That's what you hope for as far as what you're hiring and what you're putting out there in the field. But the wrong rep, opposite end of that coin, right? The other side of that coin is they're absolute brand killers, and it doesn't happen all at once or anything like that. It's not like they show up one time and be like, well, I'm going to stop selling this brand, but it does happen. It chips away one visit at a time, right? One missed follow up at a time, one moment where the floor needed something and the rep wasn't there and never got back to them, right? The floor can love a brand and stop trusting the rep that represents it, right? And eventually what ends up happening is you have to stop trusting the brand because you're not trusting the person in front of you who's representing them, right? Because on the independent floor, the brand does never walks through the door for you to assist. The rep always does, right? And Thermador, we're all surprised because Thermador has great product, right? They have a strong program, and the council, at least in particular areas, at least what it sounds like to me, losing confidence in them strictly because of representation is one of the most preventable problems of all the problems that we call out and have in this channel, right? It's also probably, if I'm being fair, it's probably one of the most common too. Finding a rep like the first one that's hard to do, and it usually takes time and a major investment for the brands, and it doesn't account for churn and turnover and all that kind of stuff, which is just part of what we do. But it's also probably the most devastating part uh, of an organization, right? Meaning that everybody's working tirelessly on product, in programming, in customer experience, and all this stuff on the back end. They can have all of that work completely undone by having the wrong rep here in the field. And I think that that's why I love the answer that the council came back, even if it is regionally, because it points to a massive problem. Thermador is a monster. We all love Thermador for all the reasons that we just illustrated. And there's at least a section or subsection that's out there that is losing the love for them because of the people that are representing them in the field. That's a big one.
Okay, you did gloss over why LG Cooking was on that list, though, and I am curious.
Listen, listen, I can inject my own thoughts into that, but this is a council episode, right? So I can do a deep dive. I will do it specifically for you. Okay. We'll do a deep dive on LG Cooking, and that'll satisfy, everything that you need to know. But as far as the council answers that came back, they were very general because we asked a general question, right? What category did you stop? And it sounds like a good portion of them have moved away from LG Cooking. But I'm not going to put words in their mouth as to why they did it, at least in this episode. I can tell you my thoughts on a future episode. Maybe we'll break that down. Um, but quite frankly, Shannon, I don't see it the same way, right? If you're comparing them against who they should be compared against, like an LG against a Samsung, or an LG against a KitchenAid, or an LG against, even a Bosch at maybe what most people would consider a higher level, I think they compete pretty fairly. I don't think that there's a drop off in the product or anything like that. Now, there's some quibbles with promo pricing and availability and backend support and those types of things, sure. But I think every mass premium brand has problems like that. But again, that might be something that's happening very specifically in one area or those types of things. So because this is anonymous, we wouldn't be able to track that to find out. But I think LG makes pretty strong product in every level as long as you're comparing it to the right people, right? If you're taking core LG product and putting it up against like a Café product or something like that, maybe it's not a fair fight, right? But
Mhm.
they're not supposed to compete against them. That's where studio lines and guys like that come into play. So, yeah, I personally have never run into that, at least in my dealings. But I'll
Mhm.
do an episode on it. I'll see what I can figure out.
Okay, if you're somebody who answered that, can you please tell me why? I would like to know why, because I be recommending LG stuff to my friends. I
Yeah.
do. So if you're gonna do so, like I'm in my 30s, so people are not like super in their wealthy era yet. So LG, I mean like LG, Bosch, if you can swing it, yeah, that's what I'm telling people.
LG
So
is always going to be a solid recommendation.
yeah,
The thing that you always throw in there as a caveat is just always make sure that you buy from somebody who services what they
right.
sell.
That's
And
exactly
if they
what I
service
say.
what they
Also,
sell, it's a phenomenal product. They service really, really well. Parts availability is easy.
hmm,
It's all in what the customer's really looking for. If you're
yeah,
comparing it to the right product, I think that they compare quite favorably against their direct competition, depending upon the line. But again, to be fair to that, the lines get blurry with them sometimes, in
Mhm.
terms of what they offer and different features and those types of things, just like a lot of those mass premium ones. So you have to be careful in what you're comparing it against. But if you're comparing it against the right competition, I think they hold up really well.
Yeah. Okay, great. Cool. I don't have regrets yet then.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to the final question. And that would be question 4. The last question we asked the retail council this week, and that is the affordable luxury space feels wide open right now. Sub-Zero and Wolf own the true luxury conversation by default. Is there a brand positioned to own affordable luxury the same way, or is that a space that is still anybody's game? Okay, good question. Interested. I'm interested. All right. The council, okay, so here's a classic council answer. They were pretty much unanimous in this one. And the space is still anybody's game, according to the council. SKS came back as the brand most consistently moving in the right direction, which I don't know if I would classify SKS as affordable luxury, but okay. Fisher Paykel came back as a brand that the council feels has not been able to establish itself in the space. Okay, I could see that as well. Café came back with strong momentum. Multiple respondents pointed to real year-over-year growth. I would think Café is affordable luxury. That to me is like pinnacle. I know that John might feel differently about that.
Mhm.
Thermador came back as a brand with significant opportunity, particularly around its program structure. I still think that's luxury. Okay, I don't know. Okay, you're gonna have to redefine some of these categories for
Listen,
me.
you're going where I'm
Um,
going with this.
all right. The council was clear that affordable luxury looks very different depending on the region. Okay, great. Distribution networks are shaping who even shows up in the conversation locally. And tariffs came up consistently. Rising import prices are changing where the category lines actually sit right now. So that all makes sense, actually. If I had just read the rest of the responses, I would know. Okay, John, what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, you and I are seeing it the same way, but listen, I mean, we cut our teeth in the same spot too, right? So it's
Mhm.
probably not surprising, but I mean, this was genuine. And this is why I love the retail council, right? And this is why I love digging into stuff like this, because this is genuinely educational for
It's
me.
the voice of the people.
But it's wild, right? And just let's, if we put it, I obviously, and you did as well, came into this with a very specific point of view. And what has come back has challenged that wildly, right? And look, I have a very specific definition of what brands live in affordable luxury, and I think about it in very specific terms, right? Which brands with design that looks the part and has some construction advantages over mass premium brands, but they're not performing at the level of true luxury. And the trade-off there, which I've mentioned in the past, is they're not carrying the same price point as a result, right? And I have a list in my head who belongs in that conversation and who doesn't. So,
Mm,
with a lot of these answers that came back, right, is that I guess what the council has told me, at least, is that my list is probably more local and regionalized than I probably would have assumed otherwise, right?
mm,
Um, you know, to me, Fulgor Milano, like, they're not even an affordable luxury brand. They're more luxury than I think people want to say. Dacor came back as affordable luxury. I consider them a luxury brand. Now they're having their struggles, but I think they're a luxury brand. SKS, are you kidding? Like, SKS to me obviously is a luxury brand. Thermador being mentioned in this. So I don't know if it was the wording of the question. Maybe they read through it too fast or anything like that. But look, I mean, these brands, because it was more than one. It wasn't just one popped up with like, "Hey, I think SKS is doing a great job." Like, it's enough to be able to talk about, right? So these brands are coming up in different markets as the affordable luxury answers, right? Depending entirely on, I guess, what distribution looks like in that region, so I think the brand that owns the affordable luxury conversation in one market probably doesn't even exist in another market because maybe the rep never got there, or the dealer never took on the line, or the story was never told properly, or there wasn't alignment, whatever, right? And so when I looked at these answers that came back after I got through the struggle of trying to be like, why the heck are these luxury brands coming back as affordable luxury? What I came to with that is this makes the brand's job significantly harder than I think most of us probably realize, at least to me, and I think what most of them probably realize is it's not enough, to be in the affordable luxury conversation, or even a luxury conversation for that matter, is you you have to be in the right conversation in the right market at the right floor at the right time. If you really kind of break it down, a national brand strategy means almost nothing if local execution is inconsistent, right? The brand that wins affordable luxury is going to win it now. I never would have been my thought before I asked this question. Now, to me, sounds like it needs to be won almost market by market and floor by floor and not kind of all at once, right? I think Sub-Zero Wolf, we can universally understand that they're luxury. So their national campaign speaks to everybody, right? But I think a lot of these brands that are either fringe, like on the line, in terms of consideration between affordable luxury and luxury, or, they got a lot of work to do. And let's get to the tariff point, right? I think this one is probably underreported, and I thought that that was a really interesting thing to point out, right? If rising import prices are compressing the gap between affordable luxury brands and true luxury brands, right? So if, let's say, Thermador and Miele are getting more expensive while Sub-Zero kind of sits where it sits, that kind of a thing, well, then category lines will continue to blur, right? And so the customer who thought Sub-Zero was out of reach now probably looks at all of these updated numbers with tariffing and all that kind of stuff, and now they say, maybe I do go there because it's really not as big of a jump as I thought it was going to be, right? That step down that used to make this, easy financial sense may not make the same sense anymore. And I think that that will change and continue to change the affordable luxury conversation in ways that most brands and most floors are probably not even considering or talking about yet. Um, and you mentioned it too. I think the buried lead this week is that Café, right? It's they have year over year growth, and I think that's great. And there were a ton of multiple council members that did call that out. And I think the brand is probably making a real push towards affordable luxury that I'm not giving it credit for. I've always seen it kind of live in mass premium as kind of a design solution to profile, but maybe that's being unfair to the brand. But I think that debate is pretty interesting. Um, so I think that we should pay attention to Café, because if Café, we talk about blurring lines and all that kind of stuff between categories, they do have some product that can live it with their professional style ranges and those types of things like KitchenAid, and they kind of play around in that affordable luxury space with some of their ranges offerings right now. So maybe that is a play in affordable luxury. Maybe I just haven't given them enough credit. So that's something that's worth kind of noticing to see if, because I think you said that you believe Cafe is more affordable luxury even today.
It's the colors
Um,
for me,
yeah,
like the customization of it.
yeah. So I think, what's interesting, I think, through all of this is, and we can put it to the audience directly, like you like to do, is, should Steel Cod kind of publish our definition of what we think qualifies as, luxury brands versus affordable luxury brands versus mass premium brands?
Mhm.
I don't know if that's helpful or hurtful, but I mean, I think I'd be happy to do it if we feel like they want it, like it's almost like this clear public list of where we believe each brand sits and why they sit there.
Mm.
So, like you always say, let us know in the comments and that kind of a thing. Maybe they do need that as a guide. Maybe there are some markets that are out there as kind of lost on where to present some of these brands in the conversation and those types of things. And if we can be helpful in that way, certainly can. Look, I know there's a lot of brands that are out there that are one thing, but sales tell a different story, and they put them against different people. So, for Steel Cod, again, we always want to be helpful. We don't want to be hurtful in any ways, right? So, I mean, maybe that's more harm than good, but if we think that that's, at least give us a working list to say, hey, you guys are crazy, these guys belong here, or something like that. I mean, maybe it's something that, is like a living document that changes all the time. Who knows? But there seems to be a ton of confusion out there in terms of who belongs where right now. And with everything that's going on that the council illustrated, I don't think it's going away anytime soon. Maybe that is something we play around with.
Yeah, I mean, I also feel like a lot of it is dictated by price. It's not just what they offer, but how expensive the products are. So, yeah, because I mean, for me, I would get really quickly priced out of stuff that's luxury.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, to
but
me,
yeah,
price point's never the way to do it, right? And
yeah.
listen, it's always off of value and construction and engineering and all of that kind of stuff because I think that's where the lines become clear.
Mhm.
When you start looking at insulation levels and weights of the metals and like all the stuff that
Right.
quite frankly,
They
I mean,
have to
it's
charge that.
boring as
Yeah.
hell, but it's all the stuff that truly differentiates
They
those
have to
lines.
charge
So
that. Yeah.
to me, those lines are pretty clear, but I'm also smart enough to know that, not a lot of people look at product, I guess, to probably that level, right? They're using spec sheets and those types of things and forming those opinions that way. And
Mhm.
certainly whatever narratives the brands are coming in with, and then just customer response, right? And that feedback. And it's like, oh, I would never compare this one to this one or those types of things. So it's interesting. I think that it's something we should probably look more into and see kind of what people would want us to bring to the table. Because I'd be happy to do it if we feel like it's helpful, but I also
Mhm.
don't want to pigeonhole brands either. So I could see that becoming problematic. But like I said, happy to do it if we think that there's a use for it.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely think that affordable luxury is probably the most gray area. Like, there's a hard line for mass premium, and there's a hard line for luxury, and then there's a bunch of brands that kind of sit in that in between space that you could make an argue for or an argument for like either way. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe at least just a definition of what would qualify as a luxury or I'm sorry, affordable luxury. Um but yeah, I also think, there was an episode that we put out recently, and I can't for the life of me remember what it was, but we talked about how selling affordable luxury
Yeah.
is, even difficult.
Yep.
I don't remember if that
That
was a
wasn't that wasn't
mailbag
that long ago. Yeah, it
was
was a
that a
few weeks
mailbag
ago.
question? I
I don't
can't
remember.
remember.
But yeah, I remember
Um,
doing it. I remember.
I'll link it in the or I'll link it in the description when I figure out what it is, but
You'll never find it.
I think it was, like, last week or something. But yeah, no, I'm curious, I'm curious what you guys think. If you have thoughts on this, if you have a strong opinion about it, if you don't have a strong opinion about this, if you think that affordable luxury is kind of a made up category in general, because I've also heard that take, like, it just doesn't really exist, let me know. I'm very curious because I do think that it's a great space for products to exist in, for people who don't wanna go full luxury, but maybe wanna be above, like, a mass premium product. I'm just curious. I'm really interested to hear what the thoughts are. So, with that being said, um, there is a link in the description, and there is a link in the show notes, depending on where you're listening or watching. If you want to join the Steel Cod Retail Council, please apply. The more the merrier. I think like the larger this group has gotten, the more interesting the responses have come. So
Yeah.
please, yeah, if you've been in retail for a while, if you're a salesperson, a manager, or an owner, somebody who really knows the product and feels like you have a lot to say on the subject, we want to hear from you.
Yeah, and it truly
So,
is anonymous. So I mean, it
yeah.
is a safe space. I mean, listen, if you are new and you think it might be cool to kind of contribute, like please do. This is
Mhm.
all perspective. And
Mhm.
the anonymity of it all is what makes it so cool because
Mhm.
I mean, you could have the same opinion as somebody that's running, half of Canada at this point. I mean, there's everybody from all levels and all opinions are appreciated on this, right? And we take it
Yeah.
in totality. So, if you are fearful of like, what if somebody laughs at my answer or anything like that, it doesn't happen. I mean,
No. Right.
so
And as you can see, it's okay if you don't understand all of the questions. That happens sometimes.
all the time.
Um, so okay, yeah, like we said, just let us know. Let us know what your thoughts are. I thought this was a really interesting episode, like probably one of the most unique ones that we've had in a while. A lot of variance in the responses. So with that being said, I want to thank you guys for listening. This is Friday, so we will be taking a break from the podcast episodes this weekend. But we, of course, will still be open to hearing anything you guys have to say on the subject. So, we will see you on Monday when we return with a mailbag episode. And I hope you guys have a nice weekend. We'll talk to you later.
New episode every day of the week, including weekends. Don't forget to rate and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.